The point here of your company's velocity is only as fast as its information flow. If every time you had to ask somebody a question and get an answer for it, or seek information that was required for some sort of artifact that you're building or task that you're doing, and it took a year, the company would never produce anything, right? So it's like, well, compress that to instantaneous, you'd be the most productive company in the world. Hello and welcome to another episode live of The Machine is the Message. I am one of your human hosts, Alan Smith, and with me is my glorious human companion, co-host, all of the things.
Patrick Keenan, that's my name.
What's going on, dude? How are you doing?
It is Patrick Keenan. Good. I am good. I'm ready to share. So I am going to pop open our screen share. We can dive into links and then discussion.
Have you drunken enough coffee? This is, what I need to know first.
I have had an espresso and a couple cups, but this is my mug today, which is the classic Phil's coffee.
Represent. Shout out.
That is.
Shout out to Phil's.
I have two.
I am going to be drinking tea in a minute, like a jerk. I've been in Italy for 2 weeks, and dude, I drank so many cappuccinos. It was outrageous. There's something they do with the milk. It's just different. They're so creamy, so good. So I was drinking like 6 cappuccinos a day. It was amazing.
Love those little espressos too. They go little espresso.
You always just order like one at the bar. Like you go to the bar and you just like kind of stand there and drink it while it's still like pretty hot, but not too hot. Like it's perfect. It's a good setup that they got there. There's this Italian phrase, I forget the exact thing, but it's basically the desire to do nothing. And I was feeling it, dude. I was feeling the desire to do nothing. I looked at no internet.
Nice.
Sorry, I was on the internet to try to find stuff to do. Like, imagine visiting a place and not having a cell phone. Like, what the hell, dude? Like, I was in Venice 17 years ago and Rome, like maybe like 15 years ago. Other cities like Milan and a couple other cities in Italy more recently. But to like be on this journey, and I was thinking back to like first time like discovering those and having like a wallpaper city guide and like having to have a marker and like map where I was within like the side streets of Venice, and how different that is to today's experience of visiting a city. Man, wildly different.
So did you succeed in doing nothing, and did you keep your phone in your pocket?
No, I had probably more screen time there than I have here in terms of like my phone. But it was mostly just like Google Maps and, looking for places to go and hang out that were very well off the beaten path. And it was super helpful for that. So I feel like it was good screen time, but I did do very little things and embraced the Italian vibes and the Italian pace.
Bellissimo. All right, so let's jump into link sharing now that you're back. And I think the last time we talked a lot about organizations, how they might change. Talk us through what this is.
Okay, so the other day, we were talking about Jack Dorsey, right? And, his take on what the organization of the future looks like, where AI is not just changing the output and of individual contributors, it's going to change the way we collaborate and the way we organize companies, right? Like we're organized on, this, what's the phrase? Paleolithic brain hardware running in medieval institutions with 24th century Star Trek technology, right? Like that's what the world we're in. And like organizations, aren't much different. There's a lot of old solutions in there that are not using existing technology, and existing technology may make organizing much easier. Y Combinator has basically come out and said, look, if you already run an organization, good luck. It's going to get wiped out by all of the new stuff in the future. And that an AI first organization is the way to go. There is going to be a whole new generation growing up, pushing out the incumbents. The incumbents are only going to be able to change so much. AI first, AI native organizations are what's going to change the world. I was able to find this as just like somebody's summary of the summary that YC wrote. And there's a couple big notes here. So AI is an operating system, not a tool. This is kind of what I just said, right? Is that there's this big underlying layer. We talked about this a lot last time about context and the war for context. And if I was to critique this, and I'd like to know your thoughts on it too, it's like, I think we were promised like the single pane of glass at the beginning of the SaaS boom, right? Of like, oh yeah, we'll just be able to get your whole company into SaaS. And then we ended up with like 50,000 SaaS subscriptions per small business, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little worried and a little wary of this just from a data fragmentation issue. Like, do you see a problem with making an AI OS?
Yeah, so perhaps like this sleeper success of AI has actually been the growth of Markdown as a format, which is a kind of plain text format where you can have some formatting like using dashes for bullets. But basically, all of AI's memory is now stored in these Markdown files. And actually, there was this whole boom for the last couple of years of RAG, the notion that you would do retrieval augmented generation. So you kind of like design this whole database around AI's inability to store all of the things in context, but now it can store all the things in context. And not only that, but you can use Markdown files as kind of a table of contents and say, if you want to know more about this, look at this other file. So I think what the SaaS explosion kind of offered is do everything in our tool, but then times 1,000. Now you have 1,000 tools. It seems like the inevitability of AI is that everything will be stored in context, which will be in a Markdown file and perhaps like a GitHub repo, which means it's theoretically as easy to boot up on Claude or OpenAI or Google or whatever local thing I want to run by just taking my files and going. And so the lockdown that SaaS had or that the platforms like Web 2.0 have is this kind of auth layer and like, oh, we'll handle the database for you. Like, don't worry about it. We got it. Like, it's our database. And then you just end up with all these different databases you have to manage in this different software. But I think if you truly are embracing this first principle, AI as operating system, not tool, then you will not outsource that. Like you would not outsource your whole company to a third party software product. And so I think you'll see a pretty aggressive push from startups and big companies to own their own data. And it's seeming like that data is going to be in Markdown files, which is like the ultimate irony of like, the past, the most basic format, human readable format is now
Yeah.
the memory.
That one to me is like, it's almost hard to believe that the like Markdown is going to be this core building block of the future. When like I never really got it, man. When it first came out, I was like, man, Markdown, whatever. Like I remember John Gruber, Daring Fireball guy. Like he was always pimping out Markdown, talking about how great it was. Like back in early 2000s or whenever that thing came out. And I never got it. I never got it. And now I'm like kind of getting it. I'll be honest, dude, I'm not like 100% on the Markdown train. And I can see the writing on the wall. It's like, I need to get on the train. I'm just not 100% there yet.
I think the point is you don't have to be because every time you copy a message from one of these ChatGPT, Claude, etc., it's copied in Markdown. Every time you paste it into another LLM, it's pasted in Markdown. You don't even have to look at it anymore. And there's Markdown being exchanged between LLMs or storing your conversations. So it is one of those funny things that just like the QWERTY keyboard or like, why do we have files on our desktop? It's path dependency and it was available, works, and let's go. But yeah, I think that this first principle makes a lot of sense. Should we cover the second one here?
Yeah, let's jump in and maybe hide the thing in between because I think it's like people just start reading ahead. Okay, so first, closed loops everywhere. In the old world, companies ran open loops. You make a decision, you execute the decision, and you didn't systematically measure the outcome. Man, this hits so hard. It's like we just do stuff and then kind of hope for the best and then start making more decisions about other things, usually without looking at the data. Like, yeah, it kind of worked out, right? It's like you just on to the next thing. So now this idea of being able to close all the loops, to be able to systematically, kind of pull this thing, like to say, we're going from starting things and never finishing them to starting them and checking to see if they work. Because machines are just so much better at that than we are, right? Like if you just tell the machine to do it, it's going to remember. You tell me to do it, I'm going to forget. Like it sucks. So this idea of like closed loops everywhere, I think has a massive potential efficiency gain where we're going to start to see what works and what doesn't work. And we're going to stop doing stuff that doesn't work. and we're going to make better and better decisions faster and faster. A learning loop, a feedback loop, the more you can close a feedback loop, the better you can make a decision the next time around. So this is like kind of like this is also a sleeper super bonus of the AI organization of the future, right?
Yeah, and I think we're building in these human in the loop processes, right? So, I don't want the AI to delete all my files. So the AI labs kind of go on the end of the spectrum that's like kind of approve all things. And then what we see gradually is like OpenCloud with dangerously with permissions and like OpenAI, give it all the abilities. And so anytime I'm kind of like vibe coding personally on something, I switch that on. I'm like, I can't pay attention. I can't babysit you, like make a reasonable call. And I have to date no reason to assume it won't, but also like I'm putting it in a little container so I'm protected in some ways. But what my point there is, like, when we say closed loops everywhere, we're intentionally opening these loops to have the human in there. And I think what we'll see more and more is like taking the human out and letting it run. Like one example is the auto research stuff, which, you just let it run overnight a bunch of times. You give it an objective function and
Mm-hmm.
it's just trying a bunch of stuff. And then you wake up the next day and it's like way better. I think we'll just see that more and more. And what that means is like, what do I look at to make a decision about whether this thing is good? And can I encapsulate that in a program that can run rather than me having to look at it, try it, click around? What can I do to put all that stuff in front of the agent and then also tell it what to look for that's good, what's bad?
The idea of just like getting humans out of the loop more often. This is like the post labor economics thing, right? Of like, everything that, can be done today. The assumption is it'll just be one layer up from there and then one layer up from there and then one layer up from there. And you're just stepping out of, concentric workflows, essentially, right? Of like, I'm just gonna step to a slightly higher to level. And that all aligns exactly with this thesis of starting with an AI first organization. You don't have to change somebody else's behavior already. You're kind of just starting at the highest level, going in, doing some of the work yourself, and then getting out of the loop as quick as you can, right? Like that's the sort of big idea here.
Yeah, and when do we want to step out of the loop? But yeah, totally a great principle.
So the next one was about making a company queryable, right? And so I think if you think of an existing organization, man, I have like such a hard time of like just trying to convince people to like not send DMs about everything, right? Like it's like if you just put this in the open room, everyone will have the context and everyone will see it. And it's like people are messaging me. I was like, this shouldn't be here. Let's just put it in the open room. Everyone can see what we're talking about, and it would be better, not worse, right? Like let's just put this out there. And if you were to almost design a system for super low visibility, you would design something like Slack and DMs, and you would like divide up all the data in between like public and private and individual like Google Doc folders and fragmented a billion different softwares. And when you needed something, you have to go ask somebody who's probably the person who knows, right? Like that. So the idea of saying, okay, well, if we could record all of our meetings, minimize the DMs and emails, get AI reading all of that stuff, building context on it, if we can start to connect our different pieces of software. So rather than having to, in your mind, go ask a person, it's like, now I just go ask the AI because the information's there. And I don't have to wait for them to get back from vacation. I was gone for 2 weeks. People were just complaining. They were like, man, I can't wait till Alan's back so I can ask him about like whatever. And it's like, I wish you didn't have to. It's like, I want to tell you stuff. I want to work on cool things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing mentioned here is that every important action should produce an artifact. And it's, yeah, you of course have meeting notes and you might have like a document that says decision, but it does make me wonder, like, how can we up the game there? Like, are meeting notes the best we can do? Or as an example, like if you thought about two dimensions when making this decision, can you put those in a chart? Is it that you looked at this data, that data, and then experienced this prototype and then looked at the market stats on XYZ? Like, how can that decision that you're making kind of like have the footnotes of the thing that I can go in afterwards and say, like, well, have things changed since that decision? Like, would we reevaluate? When would we reevaluate? Because that often happens in an organization, which is like, well, we don't do cars, we only do trucks. And it's like, okay, cool. Like that's a useful decision. But like 5 years down the road, you're like, are we still doing like no trucks here? Or like we're going to revisit that decision? And so just to have the almost source code of what made those decisions would be pretty important too, because it really shouldn't be opinion. It's okay if it's intuition or gut, but that should also be like, that should produce an artifact, which is like, okay, speak for an hour on your gut that's telling you this thing. Like, don't just tell me it's your gut. Tell me about your gut. What is your gut? What else is your gut saying? So, but I love that idea that it should produce an artifact. And I wonder if we can up the game on the artifacts that we produce from these decisions.
I think about it like as if there was an omnipresent person in a way, right? Like somebody who was just around, who was that employee, they'd been at the company forever and they just knew where all the files were and they knew all of like the history of the different clients and the projects and they knew the company strategy. It's like Dave Filoni, for Star Wars. Like he just knows how Star Wars works. Like he understands the Star Wars system. He understands the decisions were made. He understands why, things are designed in a certain way and how they should look within that world and what to do to have that kind of same thing as a synthetic human who's just been paying attention to everything. Like, yeah, you know what? Pat now had that conversation about, whatever. And they seemed like kind of interested in it, but they actually didn't have a bunch of context on something. So even though they made this decision at the end, somebody else talked to the person in charge the next day, and the decision that they made is the one that we should actually, be cataloging as, okay, well, that's current state. And, the other thing was, one layer before that or one iteration or version control before there. So there's something there too, right? About, I don't know, just I see it as less of, I see it as more of like a person who just remembers everything is there to answer the questions for everybody. That's just like the mental model that I'm using as I think about like how to do this thing and making it less of a tool and more of a entity almost, right?
Yeah, I mean, in that realm, like there's decisions and there's data and logic. It's like was shipped on this date, or like these are these features. But there's also, what does this thing believe? Like, I like the Star Wars analogy because there is some level of like, I'm not saying we decided to like, ensure that like this is how droids work. This is how droids work. Like, this is the truth. And
Yeah, right.
that, I was talking to somebody about Disney, and like the people at Disneyland, like they all have to line up for the rides. It's like a form of respect. Like even if you're like working at Disney, like you still have to line up with everybody else. And everybody's referred to as a guest. Like these are our guests. And it's not like we call them our guests, they are our guests. And so like
Mm.
of course if there's this sort of agent or personality that is helping you find what you're looking for from a data perspective, it should also kind of act and have the beliefs of whatever the culture that you're part of is. Because I think about culture and I think like if people are pinging this thing all the time, there's something different of pinging the AI versus like pinging a guy who's worked there for a really long time. One is like when I ping that guy, he's learning something new. And then I'm learning about the way to interact with that company. Like I'm learning about the behavior that he shows and like ways that I should act as well. And I wonder if that will it be replicated by an AI? Yeah, probably be replicated, will be as good, probably not. But the notion that it should also embody the culture of that organization is interesting.
The idea of the culture being embodied in there is great. And I think that this is one of the areas where in business in general, like things go wrong so quick, right? Like, like stuff happens in culture. Like I was working with Dave Gray on this idea of the culture maps. We made this culture map. And part of the early question was, what is culture, right? Like what is company culture? So we came up with this definition that was essentially, it's the behaviors either explicitly or implicitly rewarded or punished in an organization. And so you kind of got these like three layers almost of, okay, well, what is the, outcome? Like what's happening in VC firms? Everyone's showing up late to meetings all the time, or like VCs are notorious for that. The sort of layer down from that is, what's the behavior, that you would actually want? Hey, we want them to, show up on time rather than having founders feel disrespected. Okay, so what is the underlying structure or, system or incentive that we're going to add to try to make people do this thing a layer up to create the outcome, at the end, kind of system, run the process, get the outcome. Right. And breaking it down into those layers and then just seeing like what's going on in your company, like, well, you know what, in our company, it feels like we have to talk to 1 million people before we make any decision. It's like, okay, well, why? What were the tools that you put in place to make that happen? Mm-hmm. And then you've got, of course, like, right, so, exactly. Yeah, what tools weren't, there? What structures were missing, to get there, right? So this idea of a machine being able to pay attention to those things and then, execute on them and like help people run processes better is huge. And one layer beyond that, like you mentioned culture, but I think part of what you're saying too is also like values, like the respect to the guests. Right. For me, the idea of values is like usually people write it down and it just gets lost. Right. It's like in a markdown file that's never read. So how does that come out of the markdown file and get put into action, day to day? When you're making a decision, how is the value driving that? That's why company values exist. It's like when we show up in this way, we get better outcomes. So how am I reminded to show up in this way? How many processes is that connected to? And I love part of the thing that I'm loving about AI is the fact that you can just tell it something, it'll run it forever and keep that as a rule, right? Like you just get that forever. So it's like follow these values. It's going to continue to follow those values. We hope, but you know what I mean, right? Like yeah. I would forget as a human, unless you're reminding me all the time, the AI is going to remember and keep dragging those into decisions as it needs to.
And it's really good for audits. Like the audits are more technical. Like, does this crash? Does this conform to the syntax that we use to write the code? Is this accessible? But you could imagine like a lot of audits around culture and values. Like, we're going to ship this thing. Like, oh, this is the PRD. Like, does this match our values? Like, what would it do to our culture? Like, if I was the founder, would I ship this thing? What would I expect of this thing? So yeah, the ability to kind of like check your work, almost like a spell check for like a value check or a culture check. I'm sure that will just happen more and more, especially as the loops are closed and we're like relying on agents to execute on this stuff. And we're kind of putting back the training data and we have the operating system that AI is at the foundation of. So yeah, super cool.
That part about like closing the loops is like, it's a bigger deal than you think, right? Like as you go further into it, the idea of being able to essentially run a test and like an acceptance test for anything, not just code. It's like for anything that's done in the organization. Mm-hmm. And to have something that can actually review all of the work and all of the decisions and then make changes or suggest changes, based on if it fits or not. It's like, there's something really cool there. There's like, I like that a lot. And obviously like with AI being generally large language models, language, that's the thing it's good at, right? Like, more than anything is just like saying stuff, understanding, the intricacies of language. And then number two is like code, because we just made it so good at code. And then that coder's workflow almost as parents, the AI's parents are developers, right? So of course it's going to be good at development, and that development workflow of, build stuff, write tests, run the tests, ship the stuff, etc.
Yeah, so that actually brings us to our number 4, which is software factories. The next evolution is going to be test-driven. Humans write the spec, define the tests, and the AI just generates. So getting the code out there and kind of hands off in terms of how it's made, but then looking back at it to test it against maybe the values, maybe the loading speed, maybe like the amount of bandwidth it's taking, whatever your tests are. But the notion that we are building these software factories, like we're not working on a code base anymore. We're actually working on a thing that works on the code base.
And what I didn't like about this look, Y Combinator wrote this, so is focused on software companies, right? But what I didn't like about this was, how does that extend to, some small business that's not code first, like a publishing company, right? So let's say you have a publishing company. How does this apply? And it's like, okay, well, maybe it's more about the content that's being created. Maybe it's about the research that's being done. Maybe it's about the marketing materials that are being created. And you can think of it in the same way in terms of saying like, here's the spec and the set of tests. For writing the next book in this series, this is what good looks like. And this is what's acceptable, this is what's not acceptable. Same words. AI agents then generate the implementation and iterate until the tests pass, right? So to me, there's an element that you can extend it and project this same concept beyond software companies. And I think that's important because I don't want people to think that this is only for software companies. Like, this is for everyone, man. Like, this is all of the companies moving forward, not just software companies. It's going to be more bleedingly obvious in software companies, but not, everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, to push back against that, I think perhaps every company will become a software company. Like, there will be work done that is not on the computer, let's say, but for all that computer work, probably there's some loop you could close there to have an agent deal with some portion of that. I think that maybe an analogy would be like spreadsheets or the telephone. Like, maybe 50 years ago, you might be like, well, we don't need a spreadsheet to run our company. Like, I have my notebook. Good. But it's like, no, you do. Like, every company needs a finance department or somebody who's worried about the finances. They need reporting. They need to worry about what their budgets are. And so all this stuff that was like, oh, that's like business, that's like a high-end profession, has now been like QuickBooks. Like, just, software is now handling that. And now software won't only handle it, it'll handle that and the pinging people about getting the right numbers in there. So, like, at the base layer, there's that software, and then the other one would be like the phone. Oh, we don't use phones in our organization. We just talk to people in person. It's like, okay, but like, what if you need to get some inventory? And so, like, it would be silly to say our company doesn't use the phone network. The difference is that, like, the QuickBooks, the phone, I don't know, the scheduler, the front office, everything in a company is now part of one system, which is this agent running the background. And I think, like, for each of those things, that's part of the software. Like, I think the old software model is like, build a general tool for everyone and try to adapt it to different customers. The future version is like, everyone gets their own tool and it adapts to whatever use case you want to add into it. So I do think that, like, maybe the future shape of a company is as tied to its custom software as, like, the current state of businesses are tied to their spreadsheets that they use internally.
Yes. So I'm in agreement with that. I think it's a semantics thing in terms of, like, well, would we call existing companies, are they all IT companies? Because we basically all need to use IT. I think a publishing company is still a publishing company, not an IT company. The same way that a publishing company will be a publishing company, even when it's completely run on AI and software, as opposed to the output of this company is software, and that's what people are buying from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's be clear. When we say software, we don't mean like SaaS. We mean any AI stuff, like computer smart things, essentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So we got 4 more points to get through.
Dang.
No more human middleware. Makes sense.
Yeah, if your company is queryable, artifact rich, legible to AI, you should have almost no human middleware, right? I don't need to go to a manager to get information about something. That's in the system already. If I don't understand it, I should be able to talk with the AI to figure out, what it means. And the AI should be able to kind of give me, what is it like? There was this book called Turn the Ship Around, and it talked about like meeting briefings and certification, or like a pass, basically, that before you went on a mission. It was like for naval submarines. And so I forget the author's names. Turn the Ship Around. They had a hard time with meetings and briefings because people would just tune out. So what they did was they said, okay, we're going to give you a mission certification at the end of the meeting. We're going to check to see if you understand it or not. And that was like the way of, sort of checking. When that was expensive because, like, a human needed to listen to another human, talk through the stuff and, like, cognitively figure out, okay, do they get it or not? Cognition is free now, right? Or dang near free. So that idea of needing a boss to assess, does this person get it? Are they on track? It's like, no. The software, can kind of do that now and help make sure people are on track. Mm-hmm. And the point here of your company's velocity is only as fast as its information flow. Dude, exactly. If every time you had to ask somebody a question and get an answer for it, or seek information that was required for some sort of artifact that you're building or task that you're doing, and it took a year the company would never produce anything. So it's like, well, compress that to instantaneous, you'd be the most productive company in the world. So I love using those extremes to help understand, okay, well, how much does this really matter? And when you think about it that way, like, I got to wait 2 days for this. I got to wait a day for this. I got to wait an hour for this. I don't have to wait for it. Like, how much things actually change in terms of your workflow and what day to day looks like, it's drastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's like I find myself being like, "Oh, I need to wait for this." And then realizing, "Oh, I don't need to wait for this. I can just ask about this." And it's a hard behavior to get to because I
Mm.
think as humans we want to build agreement and we want to motivate each other and like feel good about the thing we're doing. And so there is some element of like, I want to share this with somebody. And I want like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do that thing. And so, but to say like, I need to wait for that is a different piece. And so like one challenge here might be, if you see something and you're like, well, why didn't they tell me? Or if you find yourself saying like, oh, I should wait until this thing happens, reframe and be like, well, do I need to? Like, is there a way I can build ahead? Like, can I build a little bit more before I, share this to get motivated with people? But I do find it's a hard behavior because you quickly realize you are the blocker for like everything, right? Like it's like permission is the blocker for everything, and you don't need the permission for the most part anymore.
I think this is, maybe we talked about this on a previous episode too, but it's just the idea that, intelligence is no longer as important as agency, just the willingness to kind of go ahead and make things happen. Intelligence is on tap. We got it. It's like, it's in the box. Just open, your favorite AI that starts with the letter C. It's Claude Chat, who cares? Just use it. Intelligence is there. You're the person who's deciding, what's happening and actually doing it, moving the ball forward still. And it's that almost like willingness to not ask for permission that I feel is like more valuable today than anything else. Like, if you just get the outcome rather than asking 5 times to get the outcome, it makes a big difference. Can we talk about that thing of like wanting to share with people and like, do the collaborative work?
Yeah, totally.
I was running into this problem the other day where some people were like, why are we still doing stand up? Like, stand up doesn't work. Like, we're not getting any value from it. And I'm like, I'm glad you brought it up because I don't think we're getting any value from these stand ups. Yeah. It's like, okay, so now we got to figure out, okay, are we going to replace it with something? What is the value we were getting? And what we realized, it was mainly just social value. It was just like seeing a few other human faces on the call and being like, what's up with your day? It's like, oh, my day is crazy today. It's like, what's up with your day? It's like, actually, I'm pretty like excited I can be, heads down. It's like, okay, cool. I'm excited for you. Get your heads down. I'm going to see something cool from this person in like a couple of days or like end of the day. Right. And so this idea of like, where are the collaboration points and how is that going to change? I think, we have reasons why our own stand up isn't working that are kind of unrelated to, I think it's just more organizational and, who's there, changes in team size, et cetera, and org structure that just don't make it make sense as much as it used to, maybe. But that human connection piece, it's like, where are we going to get that in the future? Like, where is that going to migrate to? Because it's probably going to change, right? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you kind of like it's a bit of a segue to the next point, which is there's three archetypes, but I do think that there's still this place for a coach, and I think it is important to say like, well, why is there three archetypes? Like in this world where you don't need permission from anybody and you can just drive ahead, like why do we have so the three archetypes are IC, builder, operator, DRI, which is directly responsible individual, and AI founder. Like why isn't there just one? Why aren't we all just like ICs? And I think the reason here is like, if you just focus on the thing you're building, you won't see a bigger picture. And then even if you have the bigger picture, you're not necessarily the founder with the vision. So like we do need these people looking at different horizons. Like we were talking about being on the speed train and like your eyes drifting
Yeah.
to the horizon because you're going so fast. I think that that's happening at different parts of the org. But like, are we realistically going to live in these orgs where like I tap in, I talk to like the company bot, we have a chat about what to do, I tell it to do those things, and like it feels like I'm on a hamster wheel, and like, who am I doing this for? Like, what is my relationship with life and people in this world? And I do think that there is like for me, like I know that for me, work is about building things with other people. That's how I know people, and that's the thing that I enjoy. And if you
Mm.
took away the other people, it's not like I would do more work because I'm more focused. I would do zero work because I don't care. Like that's it's like a it's one, and so I think that there's got to be a place for that social value, and perhaps like that is actually the most valuable thing you can do with other people. If you can just like collectively outsource everything to an AI, you should be. And social doesn't have to be like, hey, how was your weekend? Like, did you go see a movie? Social can still be like, what do you think about the future? Like, what do you think about button outlines and like how should radius, like that's still a social conversation. You could have asked an AI that, but like there's a reason you're choosing to talk about your craft with other people rather than a chatbot.
Dude, we could just be reading newsletters and chatting with ChatGPT right now. But we're going all this effort in our schedule to like hang out and, talk through this stuff and like kind of challenge each other and share things on it because it's more fun. Like this just works. Yeah, I like it. Even if it works worse, I like it better. And so to me, that's like, are we just going to get ousted in the future? Or like anybody who's applying that same thinking, to their work, are they just going to get destroyed by the, efficiency chasing introverts who don't give a shit that, there's no people involved anymore? Is that who's going to rule the world? I don't know.
Yeah, I will defend introverts. Introverts still do crave social connection, but they just get overwhelmed.
Mm.
So, but I do think like there is a archetype which is like I don't want to talk to anybody, and yeah, will we all just work for that guy? I don't know. Maybe we are.
Maybe we are.
All right, token. We got two more to do here. Token max, not
Just
headcount
jumping back to
max.
that, sorry, that three employee archetype
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Okay.
I have problems with it. I don't agree with this, entirely. From a structural perspective, I'm a big believer in MISI, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. I'm not sure they are. There's so much overlap between these things. I don't know if that's a good thing. You would need to find some sort of like single dimensions that you're like, cleaning this up on. So I think there's like the core of a great idea there. And I think it's a drastic oversimplification that won't hold up. If you tried to build a company like that tomorrow, I don't think it would actually work. You would put those labels on people and they would not be accurate to the work that was actually getting done. That's my feeling in terms of, those specific ones. I think that this is a great first draft of where we're going. I don't think it's the I don't think this is the map of the territory. I don't, but I love it as a probe and a push to say, what if? And I'm like, okay, what if? Let's talk about that. Like that's try it. But I don't think it's going to hold up for very long. Mark
So
my words and throw it in my face 3 years from now when everyone's LinkedIn says IC, DRI, or AI founder as their at and then company name.
yeah, I mean, it seems to me though that each of those is an answer for the other. So like imagine a company where you're all ICs, like you're all really into your craft and building the thing. Well, you just start building a bunch of stuff, right? Like this is like the vibe code slop creep that takes over, and now you have 1,000 internal apps for like scheduling meetings and no direction. And let's imagine now that everybody's a DRI. Well, now everybody's driving their own initiative, and like nobody's working on that initiative, so you can't build any momentum. And then like let's imagine everybody's an AI founder. Well, now we have like 1,000 visions of what we're supposed to aim for, and we don't have an example to follow. So and you can work it back, but it just feels like each one of those things is a solution for the other. That you need a balance of those elements to drive in a direction, yes, but also like have enough people to like execute on that direction without having to drive things themselves.
I think there's a lot of things about it that are right. And, I don't disagree with what you said. I think that, again, take the extremes. On one side, you got one person company. You basically have the AI founder who's kind of providing all of these things. On the other side, you've got a, 100,000 person organization with specialty roles, 1,000 different role titles and specializations within the company. Could you classify them as just ICs, DRIs, or founder? Maybe. right? You could kind of like, push that around there, but then there's also added detail there that creates value in terms of like, dividing things up. And so I'm not sure I completely understand this yet. My gut tells me this is oversimplified. And as organizations grow, complexity will always get added, right? Like these could be almost like categories. The outcomes are what define, it's like the outcome is related to the function, that you're working in, but we just collapse all the layers. It's like, maybe I just feel like people are going to complicate it and add layers in. This is an ideal like communism that's just never going to hold up.
Okay, let's see.
But it makes sense. It's like, hey, like,
I'm not bought in, but I'm not totally bought in, but I get it. I get what the point is, which is just reevaluate what jobs are for in age of AI. All right, token max, not headcount max.
this is an interesting one, and this one really hits me, and I'm still working on like, moving from one mindset to another on this of, okay, as we grow this company, who's the next hire, who's the next hire, who's the next hire, right? And it's like, okay, we got this problem, this thing needs to get done, okay, who's the hire? This, it's like who, not how, right? Like that was, Dan Sullivan, his classic book. And the first step you need to take as a manager is to go from thinking, okay, how do I do this, to who's going to do it? And now this next step is like, we're kind of going back to how with the AI. So it's like, it's not how, it's like how AI. It's like how AI, not how, in a way, or something along those lines.
I think it's still who. It's just the answer is always the same person. Back to our.
The answer is me, right? No, you have to do everything.
The answer is the AI, right? So
okay.
Back to our first point, which is like, get the AI to do it and just be hands off. Like, I don't care how you do this thing. I've given you enough context. I've closed all the loops. You should be able to figure that out yourself. In fact, you should be telling me what to do. And so that's, if I was like AI pilled and reading this thing, that's what they're saying, which is like, yeah, you can have an AI marketer, but I think that the hard thing here, like the counterintuitive thing here, is we see AI token bills and we think we're spending too much on tokens. And what this is saying is like, no, you're not spending enough on tokens. That's what it's saying. It's like, yeah, you got a bill for like $50,000 a month for your tokens. Be grateful. Like, you're doing something right. So I think that's like their shtick on this.
Was there significantly more output from those 50,000, tokens than you would get from a $1,000 teammate or employee? And the argument here is that it's by a 10x or 100x or a taxes, and you have to buy into that, right? And obviously, look, you could token max, you could just run infinite loops that do nothing at all. That's not what we're talking about here, guys. So like, let's just leave that argument off the table. Assume that you're actually trying to get things done rather than just token max. And I like this. I think that this really holds up. And the idea of like dramatically leaner engineering, design, HR, admin teams, I think it's coming, man. And it's not going to be job loss from the existing companies. Like, it's not going to be existing companies who are able to like, just like trim down their staffs like crazy. It's going to be this new, smaller companies and leaner teams. So there's this idea that's related to this. Do you know Daniel Priestley from Key Person of Influence? He writes this a book, company called Dent. Anyway, he talks about essentially company size, and he's like, the worst size company is like 1 or 2. It's fun, but it's really hard to have like a great impact. You grow the team a little bit, you get to like 10 or 12 people, you're in startup utopia. Good times, right? Like, there's like enough people that you can kind of talk to everybody. You can kind of know what's going on with everything. It's not like an organizational nightmare. Yeah, there's problems. Yeah, there's maybe 1 or 2 people who aren't like quite as strong as the rest, but it's okay still. And then there's this kind of like desert that you have to cross through where you don't have enough people to actually manage the number of people that you have, right? So you start going between 13 and 30 or 40 people. You're no longer running like a really great lifestyle business. You're now trying to make something that's much bigger. But in between the lifestyle business and the thing that's much bigger is like one of the worst places to work or really like own as a business, because it just sucks, mostly for these human organizational reasons. And then once you get above a certain threshold, it's like, now you've created a machine of value with enough managers to kind of like make everything work, right? So I'm wondering, if we look back at the things we just talked about, does that even happen again? Right? So like one of two things happens here. Like one of two things. One is you can keep the team lean enough to have a huge outcome and a huge impact and create huge value and build an asset as a company with the startup utopia 12 people, no managers, just like those three, founder, one or two coaches, and then a bunch of, ICs, DRIs, and a couple of ICs max, right? Probably not even that. Then the second would be, well, that desert between 12 and 50 people is eliminated by the AI OS. Management is no longer an issue. We don't have human middleware, right? Like all these other things we just talked about. AI is the operating system. The loops are closed. The company is queryable. There's no more human middleware. That might not be an issue. So anyway, just sharing that, from the idea of token maxing, adding in a ton of tokens and keeping the team below 12. Like, I don't know if one or two is the answer, but below 12 people who are like super AI enabled and know different functions really well, I think could go crazy far.
Yeah, it makes me think about this crazy idea, which is like, okay, not everybody's gonna have 12 AI pilled people that are starting a company, right? But there's plenty of companies out there that would benefit from having a kind of closed loop AI for some of their roles. Like you could think about marketing, you could think about ops, you could think about like finance, you could think about like kind of standard functions of a company. The challenge is that everybody's feeling right now is like, I don't want to put myself out of a job. Like, I don't think people are always thinking that explicitly, but there is some level of like, the thing that I do is actually unique and not automatable. And that might be partly because they see value in a thing that they're doing that's not necessarily necessary. It might be because they don't actually know how good the tools are yet. And it might be because the tools are not that good yet. But we know that the tools will get that good. But so there's this kind of perverse incentive of automating my job away, even though I am the most appropriate person to automate my job because I know it in detail. But what if instead, like, I know a job in detail and I will work for you and you will pay me a salary and I will do that job, but I will tell you I am automating this job. And when I get to a point where this is automated, you give me a bonus payout. You like pay me like a year of my salary. And I'm like, cool, thank you. Here's the replicant of me. And so like imagine then now I'm freed up to go to another company and do the same thing. Like imagine we just have people whose job it is to eliminate their job. And like as a business owner, one could be like, well, I don't want to just pay you for nothing. Like I could just get this software elsewhere. But you can't because it doesn't exist yet because the person hasn't worked for you and doesn't know the particular context of your company. But if I were to say like I will work for you for a year and then I will for some money and then I will work for you for free for 10 years, of course you would do that. That's like an incredible deal. And so like there is this level of like incentives and financial compensation engineering that could unlock a bunch of stuff that otherwise no logical person would really do, which is to automate away a whole function.
It's hilarious, right? And in a way, what you're describing is a future where, everybody's a software developer and everybody's just developing the version of them that can do the job in that company and then go sell it to a bunch of other companies, like implementations in other companies as well, right? Like that's kind of what you're talking about, right? It's like, and I don't know, maybe that is the future. Like I'm not far off. I'm thinking about it myself. And I've always been thinking about that as a founder of like, okay, I'm doing this thing now, but I don't really want to do this thing forever just because I have that, cognitive issue of desiring new novelty and the responsibility feeling of, okay, well, I'm willing to stick here and make sure that it's taken care of before I go, right? Like that's how I process it, right? So I'm wondering how many people kind of feel the same way. And or if that like is just like a different mindset in general of like, no, I want to just keep doing this job. And, part of the value that I see in being at this company is just being able to do the work.
Yeah.
I don't want to give the work away. I usually want to give the work away. Like, I'm not interested in doing it forever.
Yeah, because I do think that there are folks who have like a really happy career and they've carved out an area for what they do that's valued at the company that they enjoy day to day. And it's like, and that is like a lifestyle business, like whether that is a business or it's a career at a company, that the job itself and the daily routines are the joy. I think there's probably another class of people who really like automating things. And
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like the joy
totally.
is the new thing, like you're saying. There's a novelty to like the next challenge. Yeah. Different strokes, different
I
folks.
think in the Colby profile, there's like, I have to bring it up, but one of the things is system building versus intuition. And acting in a more improvisational way, and those are like different ends of a spectrum of like, they're both good. Is like not a,
Yeah.
you're not scoring higher because you're at one end or the other. Those are different ends of the spectrum. And then there's a chunk in the middle too, in terms of like maintenance of a system. I think that's it. I could be wrong. Colby, Kolbe. If you've never done the test, it's worth it. Okay, let's jump into the last block here, which is really like why this is important for essentially small or new business, is the early stage advantage of why new companies can do this and existing companies just can't do it in the same way. You don't have legacy systems. You don't have org charts, thousands of people that you need to retrain, people you need to convince to give up the keys to their kingdom, right? Like that's just not the case because it's you, the AI founder at this point, right? Existing companies have to maintain a live product while unwinding years of standard operating procedures. Every change risks breaking something that already works. So true. To like rebuild the airplane in mid-flight is much harder than building it from the ground up. Startups can design their systems, workflow, and culture around AI from the start. I think this cultural component is like really underlooked of, no, this is the way we do things here versus no, this is the way we've done things here. So it will continue to be the way we do things here, which is most organizations, right? Like that momentum, like turning a battleship is so much harder than turning, a Mini Cooper. And you cannot outsource your conviction on the power of these tools. You need to develop it yourself by actually sitting with coding agents and using them. Your response after hearing that? True, untrue?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me excited because I think this is the time of kind of disruption where a small team can do so much more than a big team. And I think that like, the past kind of transformations, they've been like the boom of the internet, and then there's kind of like a gradual level off. But I feel like we're in the moment where like every week stuff is changing. So you don't only need to like build this, oh, cool, you're a startup in like April. Cool, build all your systems now. In May, it's going to be totally different. So you're going to have to constantly be rebuilding these systems, which means that you do need like this culture that's ready to do that. That's kind of like on board for the latest thing if there's a tangible reason to do so. But yeah, it excites me for sure. And I think it also means that you need a lot of conviction too, because you can get like carried away with the implementation of these AI tools and kind of forget about the value that you're trying to deliver to people. So yeah, knowing the extent to which coding agents are great, and then also the fallbacks, it just feels like a good cycle to be learning about these tools and what they do and what they don't do yet.
If you think about it from a perspective of having to start one of these organizations tomorrow and do all this stuff, does it feel feasible, or does it feel like, yeah, this is a promise that won't come true tomorrow? The people who are, it's like we have the technology to live forever. It's like, well, we don't quite, but we're on track. Like it's going to happen. Are the people who are starting these companies today going to be the first people who become, AI native companies, or are real AI native companies not actually going to be born until next year after, 3 months from now, whatever?
Yeah, I think that's like a good distinction because using AI tools does not mean that you're an AI company. And like all the points we've discussed to this point have been about how do you manage the company? But I think what you're also seeing and you're seeing more of is like, oh, I can build a SaaS app. right? Which is not an AI company. I can build a traditional company enabled by software. I can build a CLI. I can build a Mac app. Those are all software tools, which are also valuable, but they are a different shape than an AI company, which is that like your whole structure, context, how you make decisions, where your code lives, but also like your customer relationships. Everything is inside of the context of this AI agent. I don't really see, I mean, I don't know that many companies, but I don't see any companies that are really doing that fully, because those companies that I'm thinking of are established before AI and they have all of these things that we're talking about, which is the disadvantage side of this. But yeah, I think there are so many people building businesses with AI tools. I don't really know anybody who's explicitly talked to me about building an AI company as a company, you know?
Yep. That's it. Man, I'm trying. Like, we've got a whole bunch that I'm looking at the amount of money that we're investing in each one and the how far that's going to get them, and thinking like, geez, we got to token max because we cannot headcount max, and there's a lot of work to do, right? So the thing is, it's like, it's not like it's one company that you could just, hey, let's go to, Paperclip, right? And Paperclip's gonna have it all figured out. It's like, that's not how it works yet. Like, it's still, this is just an idea. There's no implementation roadmap for this yet. Like, everybody who's trying to do it today is figuring it out. And there's like going to be thousands of iterations and different tracks for this. And it's like with any development project, there's 1,000 different ways you could do it, right? Like, you could come to the same outcome with so many different tool stacks. And that's what we're going to see is, a rainforest level biodiversity of software organizations that all have, kind of like the same concept, behind them of,
But yeah,
look, you pilled me already. I just called them software companies.
there you go. But to run that experiment, like literally all you have to do is copy this image, paste it into your LLM, and say, I want to implement this at my company. It will give you an answer, but what you will clearly see in the answer is it doesn't have enough context to answer. And that is like the main thing. Like, it wasn't in the meeting yesterday. It doesn't know what happened 5 years ago. It doesn't know what your investors told you. It doesn't know what your customers are complaining about. So how could it possibly help you do this thing? So like the first step for all of this is like get the context together and then paste this image in and see what it says. Maybe there is like a clear path.
So how about this? I'm going to make a stake in the ground and say that there will be no AI native company that is founded before the creation of this post. That it's only new companies, founded from now on. The AI needs to have been given access from day one to all of the context as it's grown. And otherwise you're fighting a losing battle, trying to catch up. Just as a probe, I'm going to Marshall McLuhan this because the machine is the message, I believe.
We got through them. Yay.
We got through them. I don't know if we have time for links. I'm going to have to like eat lunch and go to a meeting and stuff. And I know you just open them all up. Yeah. So this was a good discussion. Wait, do you change your mind on anything? Do you feel differently? Do you feel like you learned something?
I'm just thinking about the business model of careers now. Like, I just think there's a different business model. Like, I think the salary was invented for the salt mines. And I'm thinking, like, maybe there's just a different. And then we have the equity model for early employees putting risk out there. But there's like this new model, which is like automate yourself. I don't know. That's a thing I'll nibble on.
That's the juicy bit there. I'm thinking about context from day one and how to get ahead of the game. And that the only way if that were true, if the best way to build and the most bulletproof way to do this would be to start from literally day one. What does that look like? Yeah, I'm like, that's what's in my head right now for all the new businesses. How do you do it without starting the old way? It's a fork in the road, and the sooner you turn left, the sooner you don't have to go backwards down the path and turn right.
Yeah, it's painful to automate from the beginning, collect that context, get the pipes going, but it will pay off. All right, good chat.
Thanks, dude. As always, thanks to everyone for listening along. Anybody who's listening along live, shout out to the crew. And we'll talk. Let's talk next week. Let's jump into the links. They'll all be super stale and nostalgic by that point.
Exactly, whole new world. All right. Thanks, folks. Till next time.